Alright, I'm going to demonstrate the assembly and disassembly of a PDR-C, Magpul PDR-C fusion engine conversion. Show you how to take the engine out and change the nozzle and reassemble the gun. So we'll start by removing the FCU out of the battery compartment. Just detach this here. And we'll take the airline connector off. Okay, then we'll take out the screws, the 3 screws that hold the upper to the lower receiver. And we'll remove the buttstock, the rubber buttstock cover. Pull it off the bottom, comes right off. Okay, on the PDR-C, the fire select switch is wired to the upper receiver using the ejection port switch on here. On most of them, there are a couple PDR-Cs that are set up to have the dual stage trigger still. But for the ones that have the wiring to the top, when you remove the upper, you have to make sure you disconnect the upper from the lower with this connector right here, and then carefully remove the upper and set that aside. Okay, now to extract the engine, you have to undo the barrel clamp and remove the 4 screws that hold the engine in place. So we'll start by taking out the 4 screws out of the bottom. Okay. Then we actually have to remove the ejection port lever right here. And you just loosen up these 2 screws, or remove them if you want. I tend to just loosen them up so they just stay in place. And then using needle nose pliers, you can actually pry that loose. Actually, I'm going to take the barrel cover off first. Forgot that's probably the barrel clamp off. Makes it a little bit easier since it's going to be able to move the gun, the engine a little. So let's take these off. Set that aside, plus the 4 screws that hold that. Now the engine can lift out just a little bit, which will make it easier to remove the push rod. There, once the push rod's detached, you can then just lift the engine up, and the barrel just lifts right off and comes out the front of the gun. You also need to disconnect the trigger switch connector right here, and you can pull the wire harness right out. And this pulls right out of the gun. Set the body aside. So here's the fusion engine mounted in the modified gearbox shell for the PDR-C. And to remove the fusion engine, to change the nozzle, there are actually 3 screws that you have to remove. There's 1 locking screw in the back here. I'll just take this out. It's a 440 screw. Set that aside. And then on the front, there are 2 screws that hold the cylinder in place. And this is using a 2mm hex key. Just take these 2 screws out the front. Okay, with those 3 screws removed, the engine just lifts right up and pulls right out. There you go. The whole thing comes. In fact, I could detach the whole thing from the gearbox, but I'm just going to change the nozzle, so I'll leave the majority of it still placed inside here. To take off the front cylinder, you simply undo the banjo valve at the top, and then unscrew the front cylinder. And now you can just pop out the nozzle and put in a new nozzle. I'm going to replace this black one with a red one. I'm going to apply some Tech T gun salve grease on here. Put it on the O-ring on the back. Put it on the nozzle shoulders up here in the front. And then this has got some grease on here already. I'm just going to add a little bit more to the inner nozzle there. Pop the nozzle into the front cylinder and then screw it back on. Now since this runs inverted, it's actually, this is its normal position for the front cylinder. It's backed off by 1/2 turn. So the mount point is at the top. And we'll reattach the banjo valve. Okay. And to seat this back in here, you simply insert the nozzle end first. You want to check both sides to make sure no wires are pinched, especially here at the back. Squeezing both sides here to keep the air lines tucked in into these groove cutouts. You just seat the engine right back in here. And then you can reinstall the rear screw. I'm only going to do this lightly first and then tighten it up at the end. And then align the holes up here at the front and install the 2 screws at the top. Again with a 2mm hex key. Now the way I'm pinching it, I'm holding it on both sides here to keep the cylinder centered on this faceplate. There might be a little bit of play on the holes for the screws, so you want to keep it centered. Take a look down the front of the gun, make sure that the nozzle is centered right along the center line, and that should do it. That should tighten those down. And then I'm going to tighten the back down here as well. Now the mini circuit board that holds all the wiring is just tucked into the motor cage here. It should hold just fine. Here's the full auto select connector and then the trigger connector plus the wire harness. Okay, nozzle's been changed. Let's go ahead and put it back into the gun now. We'll just take the body, insert the air line through the hole in the back. Okay, before you lock everything in place, you want to reattach the ejection push rod. It's basically the opposite of what we did before. Needle nose pliers helps here. In fact, it helps on both sides to get this rod tucked underneath there. Let's use a little screwdriver. I think I tightened those screws down. Just didn't give it enough clearance. There you go. And then don't over tighten these ejection mag release screws. I go all the way down and then back it off by about 1/4. And I'll often reapply some grease right here as well. Keep this all greased up a little bit. Keeps the screws from backing out also, because they're kind of loose in there. Alright, now that that's in place, and I can just hold it in here, you need to reinsert the barrel through the front, and then lift up the engine and have the barrel go onto the nozzle. And there's a little groove right here on the barrel which sits on a groove on this cradle, sits into the groove on the cradle, so that will lock right into place. Once you've got that down, you can reinstall the 4 screws. Okay, then we need to put the mag well screws in. And you have the 2 screws on the back. Alright, now we can reconnect the trigger. I already fed the wire harness back down through the grip. And then let's reattach the top. And reattaching the top, always start from the front. Kind of seat the front first and put 1 screw in there to hold that in place. And then when you lower the middle, make sure the tab goes over the 2 wires. Actually, you probably want to make sure you reconnect the fire select right here first. Okay, and just tuck the wires in underneath. There's plenty of room actually under the cover when that goes down. Make sure the tab is over the wires on this side, and it should clamp right back together. And squeezing this together, you can put the pins in. And then you can reattach the back rubber cover. Start at the bottom and just snap it on over the top and reattach your macro line connector. There you have it. Oh, reassembled. Once again, I guess I gotta put the FGU back on here. It should tuck right inside there. And put the cover on. Down to the very last piece. PDR-C reassembled and nozzle change.